stuff, but the guy who asked me is a really, really nice guy, honestly. I think this will be my last semester there. It's just taking too much time. Trying to write these presentations, do all the research, work a CTO job, and teach 2 classes at ITT was a little much. ITT Tech took a little bit of babysitting, but they're good kids. You know, they work hard. We have constitutions. So if anybody's never read it, you should. We only have one. We like it. At least I like it. Hey, wait, look, I can wander, I think.
Which version is this?
That's for you to find out. No, I also will mention that there's whoever wants them, Lady Merlin is going to help us here. We've got 100, but we don't have 100 people, so we're all set. Yeah, I've got, I actually keep 2. Yeah, I keep that.
It's the iPhone version.
I was actually just going to mention that. I actually do have a copy on my iPhone. Yeah, I am retarded nerdy. I do keep a...
That's how to get your review information?
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Yeah, there is an iPhone application for the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. I do have both of them on here. They are free.
UN Charter?
What?
UN Charter?
Oh, the UN Charter? I don't know. That would be a good one. Yeah, I should. I'm using the UN Charter constantly. No, I apparently have feedback information I can get. So, you know, if you hate this, let me know. Seriously, I'll edit it. I did use a new format this time, so I'm interested to get the feedback. In all honesty, positive or not, I would like it. I tried to make the 4th Amendment entertaining, and it's a tough job, let me tell you. But hopefully Skydog shows up, because if he's not, it won't be near as funny. All right, good. We will have a Skydog. We've got 1 member of the HC here. Bush and Opfer are on their way. Al should be here. We're gonna have a good time. I mean, we're gonna try to at least. I'm not overly formal. I might have a suit on, but that's just by habit. I will strip down and probably be in a wife beater later. So, and I can almost guarantee tonight, if we're at the party, I will be drunk. So if I slur my words, I apologize. Bush was supposed to bring the beer, but he's not here, so I'll be sober through the talk. But after the talk, oh, whoa, this man knows his stuff. You guys did go to New College, good. The New College of Florida. If you've got sons and daughters, I'll just give a shout out for that right now. Great school, really is. It is top of the line. It's a state school, so you pay in-state tuition.
Physics people do railguns.
Yeah, we did. They build railguns. You can do anything you want. You get a graduate level education for state tuition fees, and if you're from Florida, it's paid for if you have, you know, your kids are smart. So, all right, I might have to. Excuse me.
Yep. Anything you want for an introduction, or?
Yeah, whatever you feel like.
All right. Excellent.
I'll trust you. Oh, that's good. Cheers to the Constitution. What's left of it? Aha. Anybody else want a copy of the Constitution? We do have them available. If not, I'll put them out to the registration desk because I don't want to haul them home with me. I've got copies.
We have a table there where stickers and things.
Oh, excellent. That'd be perfect.
Yeah.
I am a fan of the Constitution. Oh, sure. Here. Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to start? Is AV ready?
I don't know if AV's here. My law school would be so proud of me with my rum while giving a presentation. I actually have to go meet with the dean next week, so this should be fun. Yeah, I went to Stetson. Oh, really? Yeah, we'll have to talk afterwards. New College, great, my favorite. Well, I'm glad to have some New College people here. It makes me happy. Glad to have some hackers here. That makes me happier.
I also have some things to kill people with.
Excellent.
So I have from O'Reilly, Real World Haskell. Anybody
Yes.
want to get killed with this?
Oh! Okay, that's called battery. We'll talk about that later. And there is a difference between assault and battery. That is battery. I'll just tell you now. Are we're gonna get the projectors on, or? In 80, we'll give the closing rap today. Just throwing that out there. You're giving the closing rap, right?
Sure, why not?
The Fourth Amendment freestyle.
Yeah, we can do that.
If you haven't heard his new album, it's completely on the Constitution. It's pretty amazing. It's to be released next week.
I'm BitTorrent.
Through Azarus, right?
Please use Azarius.
No, please don't. They tried to sue me. No, boo.
But it's going to be that 470K file, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be compressed well.
Yeah. Well, that's one that's always a virus.
Oh, it probably, yeah.
If it's that small, it's always a virus?
Always a virus, unless it's uTorrent.
Okay, I should be having video.
All right.
Excellent.
Okay, now, are you, wait, is only you speaking?
Yeah, it's just me.
Okay, don't come up too close. Are you using the lapel or this?
I've got this one on, I think. Boop, boop, boop. Yep.
Oh,
This
you
one.
have to use that one.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to figure out what I can do.
Ask one more time.
Okay.
Back through. Pass it around.
All right.
When you're done, can you just do the really bad thing?
I was going to hold them up.
'Cause
Last call for
otherwise I can't-
constitutions.
You know what I'm saying?
I can put
There
it
you
on
go.
the table.
It's the feedback.
If you'd like more, they'll be out on the registration desks or the sticker tables in the lobby area later.
Yeah, that's what I was just
You
saying.
got to stay up here for a sec. Okay.
All right.
Everybody take note of this guy. We'll be making fun of him the entire time, actually. It's true. So everybody, big shout out for Skydog. He's going to body slam me later for everyone's entertainment.
Yes. Won't take much.
It doesn't.
You should come for the Kung Shmoo at 4 o'clock. You can really do it.
Oh,
There you go.
you've,
Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're ready. Go for it.
Great. Well, thank you very much. This is first talk of the afternoon on Saturday. This is They Took My Laptop, Tyler Pitchford, talking about the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure, laptop in airports. We try very hard to make sure that Shmoocon has some new and interesting things, and this one really appealed to us. So thank you very much.
thank you, thank you. We, as I mentioned earlier, we'll do it on camera. This is a new format. I'm going to run through some hypotheticals later on. We're going to start off with trying to get people entertained, keep it going. We're going to have fun here. I don't mind fielding questions during the talk, but I will mention that there's a lot of material to cover, so we're going to try to get through most of it. The trade-off is I'm going to try to pack your brains with knowledge. On the flip side is I don't get to go into all the detail as I'd like to. I mentioned earlier, if you want to stop me later, please do. I have no problem talking to you. I'll talk to you all day long. Love this stuff. It's just fun for me. I'm probably one of those sick people that likes to read a court case. I don't know how many other people are here, but anybody? All right. Scott Moulton likes to make court cases, if you don't know him. He's got a good one out there, and I will mention it now since he's actually in my presentation briefly. But he...
About being drugged and raped?
Actually, if you want to know about that, Al can tell you. But no, Scott has a very interesting opinion out in the appellate courts that basically says you can call people's employees idiots. I believe it's not the exact phrasing, but you can call them morons, and it's mere opinion. So it's good. It's useful. I think we could all use that at some point. But so we're going to talk about the Fourth Amendment. Who likes the Constitution? Everybody else, get out! No. If you don't like the Constitution, good. We'll talk about why later. So I do have to give this disclaimer. It is vitally important for you to understand that while I am an attorney, I am not your attorney. In no way, shape, or form is this presentation intended to provide you with legal advice. Before relying or acting upon any information learned in this presentation, you should consult a licensed attorney in your state, or district, as it were. But I give that speech every day when I walk into the HC before then, because everyone in there likes to ask me questions. But no, more than happy to talk to you guys seriously, but I do have to give that. So introduction, what we're going to cover here. We're going to talk about the Constitution. We're going to talk about the Fourth Amendment, the suspicion standards exceptions. I breezed through this part. Shmoo specifically asked me to go into a little more detail on stuff, figuring everybody would have some kind of an introduction to the Fourth. But I'm going to try to give you enough background so we're all on the same page. Then we'll get into, they took my laptop. We're going to talk about hypotheticals. Real briefly, we're going to talk about resident aliens. Someone asked me to add that in, one of the organizers here. And we'll give a little bit of some modern case law. They wanted to try to keep it new and improved, so we'll talk about the new cases. And then hopefully we've got enough time for some Q&A. And if not, I will be outside with more rum, answering every question I can. So the Constitution, here we go. Pop quiz. We're going to play a little game. How many articles does the Constitution contain? No, just the articles. 27, including. No, oh, I lied. 7. Preamble. 27 amendments. Sorry. Oh, we'll just skip that one now.
27.
No, he's good. I was going to give out the Constitutions to people who answered the questions, but I figured you can just get them anyway. Good. 10 Commandments. If that were right, we'd all be happier. There we go. Which article applied most of the Bill of Rights to the states? The 14th Amendment, a.k.a. the incorporation. When did it come in? Bonus round. Why were they added? Reconstruction, Civil War, 13th, 14th, and 15th. Before that, what was the difference? Why? Why does the 14th Amendment matter?
Before that, it allowed the Bill of Rights and the Constitution to apply on the state level. The state were independent by that concept of federalism.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. Before that, the federal government was the only one limited by the Constitution. Thank you so much, that guy. No, but before that, it's a very different world now. Now we've got the Commerce Clause, which regulates just about everything, to the states even. And that's why you get really interesting things like California's got legalized marijuana for medical purposes, but the FBI still likes to do raids. Federal versus states. I think we've got some nice showdowns coming up soon. Should be interesting. Which article or amendment contains the section on privacy? You're right, none. There is none. A lot of people like to think there is, but it's a judicial fiction. It was established by, obviously, the Supreme Court. And I know I'm glad it's there, but it doesn't exist in the Constitution. If we want to add it, what do we have to do? Amend the Constitution. So we'll get to that. When was the Constitution last amended? No. When? No. 1992. Just recently. Whoa. Oh, man, the government's coming. No, this is PowerPoint. Oh, wait, we're back up. Oh, hold on. We can do this. There we go. I guess I have to move this around on occasion. When was that amendment proposed? So it was modified in 1992. When was that amendment first proposed? And bonus question, by who? It was not ratified. It was proposed originally by James Madison, September 25th, 1789. That's how fast the government works. All right? Exactly. No, I knew that was going to happen. And you didn't get me. Hold on. What's up, baby?
You've been indoctrinated now.
Thank you, thank you. Anybody got a shmoo ball? Yes! All right. So, President Barack Obama. Whoa! Damn, that was harder than the thing. Yes. President Barack Obama was a professor of what law? All right. So we got someone in office who's actually read the Constitution. That'll be the last political joke, maybe. So back to the point. I'll try to let the crowd make the political jokes. I try to keep out of it. An introduction to the Fourth. So let's actually get back to business, other than me getting shot. The Fourth Amendment. You want me to read it to you guys? Everybody can read? No, let's do it. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. That's a good part. And no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched, oops, typo, and the persons or things to be seized. Okay, we wish that was actually completely true. But that's our Fourth Amendment. I like it. Anyone else? All right, good, good. Everybody else get out again. No, so let's break it down. Usually if you read a court case on the Fourth Amendment, and I hope some of you will, you'll see usually it'll be mentioned as the reasonableness clause or the warrant clause. And that's just the two parts separated, the part dealing with searches and seizures and the parts dealing with warrants. Okay, they are tightly coupled, but they are separate clauses. So if you're ever reading that, you want to know that. But we'll talk about that later on, so I want to bring those up. So let's talk about search and seizure. They are separate. A search is separate from a seizure. So you can be seized but not searched. You can be searched and not seized. So examples, obviously, a person being seized and searched would be a car pulled over. Anybody ever been pulled over? Anyone ever had the car search while pulled over? You guys are special. The person seized but not searched, obviously just being pulled over, getting a traffic citation. You've been seized, you've been stopped, but you haven't been searched, hopefully. And the person searched but not seized, that's coming more and more, the Kylo case. Has anyone read that one? It's a good one. It's a new one. Thermal scans, you know, and x-rays. I don't know why I typed seized, because I'm probably drunk. Who knows? Search and seizure defined. So let's talk about this a little. The search. To have a search, you need to have one government action. So there's got to be some government involvement. Private people, unless they're agents of the government, aka government involvement, aren't bound by the Constitution, right? So we can deal with that. But you also have to have an expectation of privacy. So an expectation of privacy is something obviously reasonable. Right now, I don't have an expectation of privacy. Anything I'm saying is public, right? Now, there's a lot of cases that define what that is, and we won't go into that. We'll talk some about it, but you need to understand that there's an expectation of privacy required. And a lot of the cases will hinge on that. If they don't have an expectation of privacy, then they weren't searched or seized, and it wasn't a violation of the Fourth Amendment. So seizure. When it's an individual, individuals and properties are separate. You can obviously seize a car, but you can seize a person. You can seize both at the same time. So an individual, when a person believes he is not free to ignore the government's presence, basically, anyone ever been stopped by a police officer and asked questions? Did you feel like you could walk away? Well, you probably could have, but the question is, if he tells you, no, you can't leave, blah, 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 yelling at you, you probably have been seized. If he just walks up and says, hey, can I ask you some questions, and you're like, no, you can walk away. That's fine. There are cases actually on that. Property. If someone seizes you with property, it's a meaningful interference with an individual's possessory interest. Anyone ever had their laptop taken? Anyone have it like pulled out in line and like, can we search your laptop? Yeah, exactly. That's a seizure. They've interfered with your rights for it. A lot of times at airports now, across mostly at the border search stuff, they will take your laptop, pull it aside, copy the hard drive, and give it back to you 2 weeks later, hopefully. That's a seizure. That's the government taking your property, okay? Suspicion standards. These are very important. So a lot of times in these cases, they'll hinge on what level of suspicion is required for the government to do something. And depending on certain circumstances, that'll change. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. So mere suspension, that's a hunch or feeling. You guys might be suspicious that I don't know what I'm talking about. That's wrong. Now, the reasonable suspicion is premised upon articulable facts. When I fall down drunk, then you're right, okay? Probable cause, that's, you guys have all heard that. Obviously, we read it to you a minute ago in the Fourth Amendment. But a search, you need probable cause. There's a difference, okay? A search and arrest, they're different things. So a search, you need reasonable belief that the evidence or contraband will be found. And that's paraphrased from exact wording from courts. But they have to have articulable facts, and basically, they have to get a search issued or a warrant issued. They need to be able to say that we're going to find these things here with a certain probability. We think that this evidence is here. They already have the information they need. They just need to be there. An arrest. Facts or circumstances indicate that a person has committed or committing a crime. So, okay, you see a cop pull someone over, that's a misdemeanor. They've seen it happen. They have probable cause to believe that something has happened. Now, that's the common law definition. But for an arrest, they need to believe that the crime is... Oh, you're just nodding. Oh, sorry. No, please, please. So, exceptions to the rule. There are more exceptions to the Fourth Amendment than there are actually words in the Fourth Amendment, I would say. The border exception is the big one we're going to talk about, so we'll go with that one. Plain view is a big one. We'll talk about it briefly. Open fields, we don't cover it all, but that is an interesting exigent circumstances. Search incident to arrest, that's a big one, especially with being pulled over in a car. That's usually pretty common there. Civil search, that's an administrative search. Going through an airport, they aren't searching you criminally, they're searching you because you're getting on a plane and it's safety. That's a civil search, an administrative search. Motor vehicle has a reduced standard, so when they want to search your car, it's a reduced standard, roughly speaking. And public schools, in a public school, yes?
The word reduced meaning the bar is lowered or gives them...
Because it's a different circumstance, yeah. Usually it kind of mixes with the search into arrest in a car and it comes into this weird area. But yeah, it's just the bar's been lowered on it. Public schools, due to safety factors and that administration works, you know, in loco parente, as they say, or parentis. That's a tough one. I actually don't know. I could check. It's usually in the concept of high schools where you see most of the cases. My guess would be in schools and a college, probably not. Since they're not working in the place of your parents, I think that they'd have but they might because of safety factors. In the modern case. I'm sure there's a case on it, I just haven't read it. And then consent, that's the big one. So if an officer says, may I search your car, and you just kind of go, yeah, obviously they can search. It's not really an exception, it's just part of the rule. You gave them permission, so it's no longer, you know, a violation of your rights. You waived it. So let's get to it. They took my laptop. Everybody's read the cases or seen it on the news. Who's a nerd or a geek? Either way. That's it? We're at Shmoocon. Come on, people. Wow, really? Is everybody here legal nerds? Legal. We got one. Okay, what's everybody else? I don't know. Good. We don't want to tell you what we are. No. Scared. Good, good. You should be. Yeah. So, I mentioned we're going to talk about resident aliens real quick. This is a Shmoocon special. The general rule is resident aliens are treated the same as citizens. They have the same rights, basically, once they're established. That's the Wong Wing case, 1896, and then the Russell v. Bush. They talk about it, and there's several other cases that define it, but we won't mention them right now. But they're treated basically the same as Constitution, especially in a criminal case. If you're arrested as a resident alien, you will have the same rights, and even if you're a foreign alien. If they're in criminal prosecution, you get all the same rights. You get everybody's, you get all the lovely amendments. But, so the Wong Wing case, this is an interesting one. It was back in the day, and we'll talk about it in a second. But 1896, I'll use a quote from that I really love. And this one's interesting. The degree of control, the Gitmo case, obviously this was a group of cases that they sued from the Gitmo cases. They sued the administration, blah, blah, blah. We all know about that. But the court actually came back and said because of the degree of control over Gitmo, that Gitmo was considered about the same as the U.S. soil. They get habeas corpus rights, which is interesting from the fact that they were arguing because they weren't on foreign soil, they wouldn't have habeas corpus rights, blah, blah, blah. But the court said because there was so much control exerted by the government, so much government action, that it was tantamount to being on government soil. So these prisoners, since they were being held, get habeas corpus rights. But the interesting quotes from these, I like these a lot. This Wong Wing case, and I'll read it to you because I love it. Remember, this is 1896. You know, this is what makes, in my opinion personally, just what makes America great, that people actually will say this. The contention that persons within the territorial jurisdiction of the Republic might be beyond the protection of the laws was heard with pain on the argument at the bar. In face of the great constitutional amendment which declares that no state shall deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of its laws, I just think it was amazing that the Supreme Court literally said to the government, why would you argue this to us? You know, with pain. We heard this, that this is ridiculous to us. And, you know, in modern times, we like to think that that's probably not what the court would say. But if you look at Hamdi v. Rumsfeld, which was the sister case to the other one, Russell v. Bush, a state of war is not a blank check for the president when it comes to the rights of the nation's citizens. If I can't get a round of applause for that, I don't know what can. This is beautiful. I mean, and this came out of what we would probably term a more conservative court at this point, but that's right. This is what America was based on, and I'd like to think this is where we're going to stay. And that's my soapbox. We'll move on. But it's okay. We're going to try to make this fun. And you guys saw Skydog a minute ago, so he's going to be our subject on this. The rules are this. We're going to do some scenarios. We're going to do some hypotheticals or hypos for those of you who've been to law school or are going to. You will do these all the time. I'm sorry. No, the scenario is warrantless. All of these are warrantless. There's no warrant issued. Once there's a warrant issued, it's usually you fight the warrant, but that's about it. Scott can tell you about that. Unless stated otherwise, and I don't think I stated it anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. It's the current date and time, so it's now. We're in the current present situation with the current case law. So this is Skydog, and if you ever take a photo of Skydog, this is exactly how he looks. It never changes. It's actually pretty amazing. So his name's Skydog. He is really old. Thank God he's not here right now. He is our godfather at the Hacking Consortium, and anyone like Douglas Adams? Yeah. Then you will get the joke. Everyone else, read the book. Reading is good, and buy it. Sorry, all 5. Yeah, read the 5-part trilogy. And if that's not funny, you don't belong here. So here we go. This is our first hypothetical. Skydog has just attended Shmoocon 09. He decides to tell all his friends, all 2 of them.
Yeah, but we're here.
Yeah, I know, they are. We had to have some fun, Al, come on. So he calls, he writes a letter, and he emails his friend to Wrench, who's not here, actually, and Bush. Bush, are you here? No, he's drunk still. Uh-oh, that's not good. So this is our Wrench stand-on. Thank you, C-Blind. This is our stand-in Wrench and Bush. As you can tell, Bush was drunk. Yeah, no, you guys have probably seen him around. If you haven't, you will. He's quite loud. So let's break through what happened here. So he sent an email, he sent a letter, and he sent a, did I say a phone call? Yeah. Yes, good. and he made a phone call, and he sent one in the country and one out of the country. Very, very different scenarios, especially with this. So you've got this new case, right? This 2008 Selgin. It's okay to read foreign letters without suspicion. Now, it used to be under the Ramsey decision. Now, that one was an interesting case. Basically, you had a package, and they could look at it as long as it was bulky and suspicious, but they had to think that there was something funny about it. Going across the border, mind you. Has to be across the border, not in. Because now, yes?
Are we going in or out, or does it not matter?
Doesn't matter. If it's coming across the border, it's subject to customs. So it's going outside the country, right, which reduces the standards of what's going on. The Ramsey case said you had to have some kind of suspicion. This new case, which is interesting, note it's a Ninth Circuit. And we didn't talk about jurisdiction, and we'll talk about that later if you guys want to outside. But it's a Ninth Circuit case, so it's not the Supreme Court. But it said, okay to read foreign letters without suspicion. And the basis of that, which is interesting to me, is that they said a letter now can contain a promissory note, basically, like a forged money transactions. They can be passing money or forged documents through the mail. So now they can read your letters because they think that it could be, a letter could be, a criminal instrument now. So now that they can read all of it just for protection's sake, which is an interesting decision in that case. So if you're sending a letter across the border, it can be read. That's basically what that case is saying. Who's heard about the FISA cases? All over the news. Anybody here they were approved? Okay. So the recent decision on the FISA case, obviously, the FISA court released an opinion that was, I don't remember, it was 2007, 2008, they issued it. After the JAA, the PAA, excuse me, the Protect America Act. Now, the interesting part of that, obviously, the warrantless wiretapping, they didn't approve the warrantless wiretapping done before the PAA, but they said that the PAA was legal, that the PAA was a valid law, so that they can tap your phones if, now this is a really interesting part to me, one party is reasonably believed to be outside the U.S. Reasonably believed. Did anybody see the keynote with Blaze? And it was interesting because he stole part of my talk, but that's all right. No. The reasonably believed part, they do. They take everything in, and then as long as they reasonably believe the person is out, they can just warrantless, without a warrant, excuse me, listen to that. Interesting. It's those checks and balances seem to have gone away in that sense. And you'll notice, again, it's the border exception. It's going across the border, or seems to be going across the border. And if anybody knows the Commerce Clause, it's an interesting parallel to that. But anyway, with state boundaries, email. So this, on a personal machine, they're going to need a warrant or one of the exceptions to the warrants. That's your machine and it's private, okay? They need some reason to search it, plain view, whatever. An exception, or they need to get a warrant issued. On a remote server, what's going to happen is it's going to be available by subpoena. So you've stored that somewhere else. Remember that expectation of privacy? You've granted that email to someone else. It's no longer your private information. So they can get it by a subpoena. They don't need a warrant. And account information, they just get a court order. If they want to know who sent these emails, they can just ask for it for the AOL providers. You guys have all seen those requests, I'm sure, posted online. That's kind of where they go.
What if the remote server is your own personal server somewhere else?
Well, that would probably be, usually when they're talking about remote servers, they're talking about having it controlled by another party. So if it was yours, I would say that it would probably be protected under a warrant still. You'd need a warrant. You'd need reasonable, probable cause. I don't think that's been litigated yet, but my guess would actually probably be that it's subject to a subpoena. It is stored on Google servers. Google does analyze it for the AdWords or their AdSense. Since it's being opened up by someone and analyzed, that would probably be a private search, I would argue. That would be my guess, but I don't know a case on it specifically. So private search, let's see. Next up, what's Skydog do? After Shmoocon, Skydog returns to Nashville to find he's been evicted and his laptop was stolen by some goobers. I had some other wording in there, but I thought there might be kids. One of the goobers turned on the laptop, found all of Skydog's hacker consortium files, freaked out, as they always do, and called the police. The police have Scott Moulton. Scott, stand up. If you guys ever need a hard drive done, Scott can do it for you. Scott Moulton run in-case on Sky's machine. Okay, so there's actually a case almost exactly on point with this. These are based off real cases, obviously. But it was Runyon and Chris. Chris is the new one. We'll talk mostly about that. But Runyon was a really interesting case. We'll talk parts of it. We'll try to go quickly, though. Actually, I don't have a clock. Does anybody try to track? They said that I have a clock. OK, we're good. But Runyon, examining part of the system does not open all parts. Now, what's interesting about this is it was a divorce case. And the husband and wife were getting divorced. The wife goes through a bunch of files, starts opening them. We won't talk about what's on them, but sends that to the government. And the court basically said that even though she went through some of the zip disks, she didn't go through all of them. So only the ones that she had searched through herself were open to the government without a search. The ones they went through without a warrant weren't. So it was this compartment idea, this idea of compartments, which is really big in these type of cases. Crist, you guys may have heard about this one. Crist is a really interesting case. It came out, it's a middle district case, so it's not an appellate level, it's not Supreme Court, it's a lower level case. So it's persuasive in some other jurisdictions. But if you read about this, it was on Slashdot, it was on a lot of the tech journals, I think it was on Dig and all that goodness. Using in-case to hash files is a search. So the way in-case works, if anybody doesn't know, in-case goes across and just does a bit-by-bit check, as far as I understand, runs samples on it, doesn't actually boot the system. So they mirror your hard drive and they run in-case across it. And they were trying to argue, the government tried to argue in this case, or the prosecution, I should say, the government, same thing, that running this hash wasn't a search because they weren't opening the files. They also tried to argue that since the laptop had been opened by that other people, those goobers, that it was a private search that had already been done. But the judge came back and said, no, running a hash across the files, you need a warrant because you have time, you could get a warrant, there was no exigent circumstances. You could have gotten a warrant, you needed one because an in-case search, running a hash file, is giving away the contents of the file. Because in-case runs a hash and then compares it to databases looking for matches. So you can identify information about those files from it. So it's a search. It's pretty logical. It was actually a decently well-written opinion, except, and I don't think I included the wording here, unfortunately, they talk about how only one platter of the hard drive had been accessed, so the other platters were still sealed off from the search, which anyone knows anything about hard drives, that doesn't make any sense at all, but it's still entertaining. It makes for some good fodder. So Skydog in this case, what would happen? What do you think?
Any evidence they pulled from the disk is now disallowed.
Yeah, it would be excluded out most likely. That's exactly right. Skydog, the files that were opened by the people would probably be open for prosecution. The ones that they ran without a warrant wouldn't be. Pretty easy, but it's an interesting case. Chris, if you haven't read it, you should. Sure.
How would they prove that those files were Skydog's?
Well, that's their job. It's the prosecution's job. He's got the burden in that case. But they can go through circumstantial evidence. I mean, if it was his laptop, that kind of stuff, you could show that he had control over the laptop, who opened it. But there is an argument. The defense could say, the laptop had been taken by the goobers. How do we know they didn't put him there? You'd go to timestamping information. You'd have to hire someone like Scott to come in and say whether the hard drive had been written to an X number of time, blah, blah, blah. He gets paid a lot of money to tell you what you should already know. It's good stuff. But the facts behind Chris are really interesting, and if we get a chance afterward, I'd really like to talk to people about it. It's just ridiculous. But what happened, it's entertaining. The guy couldn't pay his bills. It was pretty funny.
Am I recalling correctly that the Supreme Court recently decided some case that allows in some circumstances for incorrect police procedure that discovers damning evidence to still be used?
We actually will talk about that. It's in the last slide of this case. It was 2009. I think it was January it came out, the case. It's not Arizona, it's a different name. I forget the name. It starts with an H, I think. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little later if we can wait. But so Skydog's back again, because he'll be back a lot. He gets back from his laptop from the police and he boots up Windows Millennium, because he's brilliant. Did anyone ever use that? Wow, that's awesome. Look at the sales numbers. No, I actually put that on a computer one time, and I'm not kidding. As soon as you tried to play an MP3 file, legally, mind you, that it would skip on a default install. Awesome. Favorite OS ever. Macs are good. Obviously, the machine is hacked into by a Turkish citizen on the hunt for terrorist hackers. After finding Skydog's hacker consortium documents, the man quickly reports Skydog to the FBI. This is based on a real case. It's known as the unknown user cases. And what's interesting about this is he did it twice. He did it several times, I'm sure, but he was on the hunt for, not terrorist, child porn. Most Fourth Amendment cases deal with child porn, as you probably know. He was looking for child pornographers. He found a guy. The first case, the government, the case, the US v. Stiegler, the 11th Circuit said the information was okay. He wasn't a government actor. He didn't qualify for the factors, which we'll go through in a minute, right here, these private search factors. The government didn't encourage him to do it. They didn't initiate the search, and they weren't aware or acquiesced. And, now this is an and, very important, the and. Did the private actor intend to help law enforcement? He did. He did this on intention to help them, but the government didn't initiate it, so it wasn't a problem. The second case, however, when he did it again, the Eastern District of Virginia said, no, we can't let this evidence in because now he's a government actor. He was covered. He was a Turkish citizen, but he was a government agent at this point. So he was subject to the Fourth Amendment, and it was an illegal search and seizure. Does everybody?
Was that because he'd already done it once, and therefore he'd already established a relationship with
Exactly. Now, the interesting part is the case actually talks about, they go more along, the decision is more along the lines that not that he was so much had done it once, but that the government had actually encouraged him while it was going on. They were like, hey, you did a good job on the last one. So they contacted and passed him off to the contact in Virginia. Virginia said, well, could you get us this? Could you get us that? They were using him to get information, whereas in the first case, he just gave it to him. He said, here you go, there's the information, enjoy. In the second case, the government went out and got it from him. Could you give us the IP address? Could you give us the name? That kind of stuff. So the government took an involvement in it. But it's an interesting thing that in this case, the private search has become, the first one was okay, but the second one wasn't. I think it's really illustrative of how a private search works and where government involvement comes in. So this is the meat. This is what everybody wants to know about. And we're going to try to spend some time here. I've got a little bit of time here. So we'll try to put some juice behind this. It's because Zydog is stressed out, obviously, after all the times being arrested, and takes his vacation to Mexico and engages in some serious drinking. While returning, he has a feeling something is going to be searched, and not quite in his right mind, Skydog swallows his cell phone. He also attempts to hide his laptop, but is unable to fit it anywhere. Skydog's a big guy, and he uses a Mac Mini 9, so come on. Could have tried harder, let's just say that. Skydog was selected for a search. Obviously, he's going to be sweating at this point. This is what it might look like. That's pretty accurate. No. He's got a big mouth. Wow. No. Border crossings. So border crossings. We talked about this. You guys have all seen. Has everybody seen this in the news or at least heard it online? Does anyone pay attention? Well, if not, we're going to talk about it a lot right now. So US v. Arnold, the Ninth Circuit. Laptops are no different. We talked about the container space from a closed container, which is subject to a suspicionless search. When you cross the border, the courts say that they need reasonable suspicion, is what it says. But because you're crossing the border, it's per se reasonable. They have reasonableness because you're coming across the border. Now, what's interesting about this, the laptops are no different from a closed container. So your laptop is now the same as a UPS package you're bringing across. You guys have all gone through customs, everybody here? Anybody try to bring in cigars or anything? You know, and they look through it, where are these from, and you peeled off the labels. That kind of thing. That's exactly what they're doing with laptops now. You come across the border, they will take your laptop, and they won't just check it to make sure it turns on. You guys been to the airport? You guys, I'm a little older than probably some people here, but you guys remember when you go to the airport and they'd ask you to turn on your laptop to make sure it would work, or turn on your cell phone so it wasn't a bomb? And that's in an airport. It's not coming across the border. But when you go to customs now, they don't ask you to just turn it on. They can ask you to turn it on and, excuse me, can I use that for a minute? And they'll go through, and they'll actually mirror the hard drives if they want to, that kind of stuff. And Arnold, the Ninth Circuit in 2007 said, sure, that's great, no problem. Obviously, there's privacy concerns. Everybody here is a little freaked out about that, right? So what's the first thing you want to do? You think about running TrueCrypt, right? So what happens, and there's no decision though, this is the interesting part. What happens if you TrueCrypt the machine?
I thought there was a decision. Wasn't there a guy who had kitty porn?
The Boucher case.
Yeah.
But the problem with the Boucher case is they are talking, that's a Fifth Amendment decision. What if they just, and it was unencrypted when you booted it, it was encrypted. We'll talk about that in a minute. We do go into the Fifth Amendment, I apologize. We will talk about the Fifth Amendment shortly. Briefly, I thought about doing a talk at DEF CON or submitting a paper there on the Fifth Amendment, but I don't know. It's a little iffy. But so how are you going to protect your information? What are you going to do?
Flush the laptop or just mail all the information. Pull the hard drive and email.
Now, if you mail it, it's subject to search if it's bulky, maybe.
Transfer files off the internet now.
You can send information over the internet. The FISA wiretaps going out of the country, though. Cops can't use Linux. Cops can't use Linux. It's true. No, Scott, can they attest to that, Scott?
Unless they're privately hired.
Unless they're privately hired. Scott could use Linux. But no, most people, and this is funny, there's actually a lot of talk in business journals, a lot of stuff. What they do now is they just give you a new laptop. When you leave, the laptop is wiped. Everything's clean. It's a brand new hard drive swapped out. You go across. You do what you need to do. You either leave the laptop at the office in the other place, or you just don't bring it back. You leave the hard drive. Because if you got a lot of financial documents, you don't want the government going through it. If you're Pfizer and you've got a bad report, do you really want a border agent looking at it? FedEx can be searched too, actually. One of the original cases in the mail search was a FedEx. And actually, I think it's weird. They kind of imply, I couldn't say if for certain or not, but it seems that FedEx gets a lower standard because it's a private company. It seems like they sent it through FedEx, so it seems they could do it. I think it was one of the cases coming up we'll talk about. It's weird. It's interesting. But yeah, no,
Sending 4 different shipments to FedEx.
that's interesting.
So do you have to relinquish your password if it is encrypted?
Well, this is interesting. There's the Bouchier case, which we'll talk about, and I haven't seen a case on point. Scott, could you?
Well, I mean, and I know you're about to talk about it, but the Fifth Amendment was because you don't want to incriminate yourself. You don't
Self-incrimination.
want to use your password, but what if your password is "I am guilty"?
I am guilty. I don't think that would matter.
That's incriminating.
Well, actually, it's circumstantial, but so is just a weird password.
Wasn't there one decision where the guy with the kitty porn thing, they were coming across, and they said he did not have to give up the password because it was testimony. It was something that he had to.
It's a communication, and that's actually the Bouchier case. And we're gonna talk about that.
There's a second case that said that's not actually accurate. It was in a different jurisdiction where they said the police were already in possession of the laptop and therefore already in possession of the information, and that
They just needed the password to get through. Yeah, we'll actually talk about a lot of that here, just coming up in a second. So I'm gonna hold off on that. But one thing I do want to cover is on the border search. You've got routine and non-routine. So a routine search is, hey, can I see your laptop and check it out? Actually, they've never defined whether a laptop search is routine and non-routine. I should correct that. But a routine search is, hey, can we look through your car? Can we look through this bag? They don't even ask. They're just, we're going to look through your bag. A non-routine search is, and it does require, the routine search is just reasonable because you're coming across the border. A non-routine search is something like a strip search, destroying the car, pulling out the tires or pulling out the gas tank, that kind of stuff. And bodily intrusion, everybody's favorite. Bend over and say, ah. We'll get to that in a minute. I think it's the next slide, actually. But so those are routine and non-routine. Those are different standards. Reasonable suspicion, again, we talked about that. But border crossings. So Skydog, you're up again. While searching his laptop, the officers find a drive named My Illegal Files. Good naming, Skydog. And proceed to open a document containing what appears to be a listing of credit card numbers. They confiscate the laptop, but open it. Upon turning it back on, they find that the drive has been encrypted. This is the Bouchier case. This is the one that everybody's been talking about. This is hot in the news. It's right here, 2009. It's for Virginia Middle District. It's not an appellate court case. It will be appealed. I can almost guarantee that. Now, what's interesting is there's been a lot of debate about this case. A lot. What they said was encryption keys are products of the mind and are not subject to disclosure under the Fifth Amendment. And that's the entire vault code versus the key to a lock debate. If you read any of the really important Fifth Amendment cases that deal with this kind of disclosure from the Supreme Court, they talk about the mind, a product of the mind, or they talk about a vault, the combination to a lock or a safe versus the actual physical key. And that's the distinction.
That could apply to anything that you've written.
Wait, what?
That's ridiculous, because that could apply to anything that you've written.
Once it's in physical.
Everything that I've written is a product of my mind.
But it's out of your mind. It's now in a physical, tangible form, and that's the difference. That's where the line is drawn. If it's in your head, the Fifth Amendment can protect you. Because if you're giving it to, and you were talking about this, if you acknowledge a piece of information, excuse,
password safe. Where does a password safe fall in that then?
a password safe, where you type,
If you store your password in a program like KeyPass or Password Safe, at that point it's out of your mind technically.
well, there is a gray line, and I actually haven't seen any cases on that. And it's one of the things I wanted to talk about in a Fifth Amendment talk is one of the things I want to try to find more information on. But yeah, you get into these really gray areas. And what's interesting is they can grant you immunity, and then they can tell you to give it to you. Like, we won't use this against you. They'll use the information, but they won't use the acknowledgement of it. Now, this is the interesting part. So let's say in this case, this Bouchier case, right? His hard drive, the details, he comes across the border, he's got his hard drive on, they see kiddie porn. They turn off the laptop. When they boot it back on, it's got PGP encryption on the hard drive, on the Z drive. So now they're like, hey, open this up. We know there's kiddie porn on there. Type in your password. And he said no, obviously. He said he invoked his Fifth Amendment right. And the court agreed with him and said, you're trying to make him incriminate himself because who knows what else is on the Z drive that you haven't seen. And if he unlocks that for you, now you've got access, and he's just giving you access to that. Now, what you're talking about is the reason they can give you immunity, it's kind of hard to explain, but if they give you immunity, they can't prove, if they can't prove independently that it's your laptop or it's your Z drive or you have access to that Z drive, they need to grant you immunity. They need to prove some way and then grant you immunity, and then it's a foregone conclusion. They already know that it's yours. They can prove it through another means, so it's not self-incriminating because you've already been incriminated. Does that make sense? It's tough to explain, but if they give you the immunity, they don't use that you typed in the password. They don't go into court and be like, he typed in the password. That's his laptop, obviously. But they can give somebody else in, like, yeah, I saw him using that. Then they can probably grant you immunity and get around the Fifth Amendment in that way. That's a whole other talk. But so that's the Fifth Amendment. I don't want to talk too much about it, but this is one of the more interesting cases. If you guys want to talk about it outside, I'd love to talk to you about it. The case is pretty crazy, and there's a lot with the Fifth Amendment that's really interesting. We're going crazy here. There we go. Okay, because of the heavy drinking, thank you, Skydog. Skydog's eyes are red, his skin is pale, more so than usual, and his head, and he has the shakes. What's that going to indicate to a border crossing agent? Yeah, he's got drugs. He's all messed up, and he's come across a border. So the officers also note a funny smell on his laptop. Skydog. Didn't think. Shh. So obviously, pretty common in a border search. You know, you've got a guy, he's got the shakes, eyes are dilated, he's looking crazy. They're going to do a strip search, and they're going to do a bodily intrusion. They're looking for drugs. And in coming across the border, it's a reasonable suspicion. And it's funny, there's a case that actually says, because of the dangerous nature of carrying drugs inside your body, that they don't need to go get a warrant. Because time is of the essence, basically. It's an exigent circumstance. If the balloons burst or whatever, the guy could die. So it's okay to go ahead and do a bodily intrusion without just reasonable suspicion. So it's non-routine. It requires something more than just coming across the border. You've got to have reasonable suspicion. You've got to have those indicators, some articulable facts that something funny is going on here. Now, it's funny, it's usually part of an inventory search. It's not a criminal thing. And what I mean by that is if you get arrested, if you're taken to jail, you've already been arrested, a strip search is usually part of an inventory. When they bring you in, they strip search you and look to make sure you're not bringing any contraband, that kind of stuff. You're now basically a ward of the state, and they need to go through and inventory all your stuff so you can't go back and say, oh, I lost my Mona Lisa. I need it back, please. So it's not criminal in nature. They're not looking for evidence. They're looking to protect themselves. It's an administrative thing. And that's one of the interesting, I won't say loopholes, but one of the quirks with the Constitution. So recent cases, these are non-border, these are state cases also, I should mention, these aren't federal. But it was interesting, they took a 13-year-old student and they strip searched her when another student said that she got her 800 milligram ibuprofens from her at school. At school. So they actually, the vice principal, I think it was, I don't know if it was the principal or vice principal, I think it was the vice principal, had her ordered to be strip searched by the school nurse. Now, the court said she sued, obviously, for a violation of her rights, and that's what this case is. These are civil decisions. These aren't criminal. They found nothing. She sued, saying that was unreasonable. The court came back and said, yeah, that was unreasonable. 800 milligram ibuprofens aren't going to kill anybody. You could have sent her home to be searched. You could have less drastic means.
You bring the parents in.
Yeah, could have brought the parents in.
And the only counter-argument the school gave was, well, we didn't actually strip her.
Yeah, no.
We put her panties on, but we made her pull them away from her body.
Exactly. Yeah, they didn't actually make her remove her undergarments. They had them pulled away while the nurse looked. But I mean, this is a 13-year-old girl. So the court came back and said it was unreasonable. They had no real evidence, and it wasn't an exigent circumstance. Nobody's going to die. There was no life in peril here. So they gave the right to sue the vice principal, but they said they used the Nuremberg defense for the nurse. They said she was just following orders, so you can't sue her, which I thought was interesting. The other case, this is a Long Island case, it's out of Long Island. So jumped in a female motorist to a strip search after arrest for a misdemeanor marijuana possession was unreasonable. What was funny about it, not funny I should say, but they had closed circuit television that male officers were watching during this. Apparently in the decision they talk about how the station actually had a policy to search females but not search males that were brought in on the same charges. And they said because of these factors that it was an unreasonable search. Pretty straightforward there. So we'll move on. What's Skydog do next? I don't remember. No. So during the strip search, the examining officer notices a lump in Skydog's throat.
Make this like not real. What the? That only happened once.
We saw the photos, Sky. It's bad. No. So obviously, what are they going to do? They could have done it anyway with the previous stuff, but they're gonna do a stomach pump. They're gonna do some kind of a bodily intrusion, as we refer to it in the legal world. Non-routine again. Obviously, we talked about that. There's a lot of crossover with the other amendments. You get a lot of due process cases involved in this, and other talks we could do there. But one of the weird things is it may require a warrant depending on the level of urgency. So if Skydog swallowed a cell phone and he didn't look all red and stuff, but they wanted to get the cell phone out and it wasn't going to be damaged by stomach acid because it's not exigent. They don't need it, so they can go get a warrant. And they should. They should go get a warrant to do a search and seizure on this case. But if he swallowed drugs or he looks like he swallowed drugs, it might be his life is in danger, so they don't need a warrant. Make sense? All right, good. So in this case, Skydog would definitely be sore in the morning. That's true.
Was his cell phone really a crackberry?
I don't know. Yeah. It's an iPhone. Well, that's always wise. So Skydog gets arrested. So because of all of his odd behavior and suspicious actions, Skydog is arrested on the suspicion of smuggling something. We don't know what. But during the booking, Skydog's phone rings. Okay. Now this is an interesting case. Well, they've already extracted it, I should say. It's not in his throat anymore.
It's ringing. That's
But-
scary. Who's pulling that off?
Hey, that is funny. But so there's a case exactly on point here. A guy was arrested for drug possession. They had him in. He was suspicion, obviously innocent until proven guilty. Anybody believe in that still? Wow, that's sad. Nobody believes in innocent until proven guilty? Ideally. I mean, I like the ideal at least. I mean, come on. But no, so this De La Paz case, the guy was arrested on, suspicion of drug possession or dealing. So he had a cell phone with him, and they arrested him. His cell phone rings. It's sitting on the officer's desk, and the cell phone rings. So the officer decides he should pick it up because obviously he's getting calls at 3 in the morning. It's probably a drug deal. There's probable cause to believe that there's criminal activity going on. And the court said that that was fine. They didn't need a warrant to answer his phone. You know, similar to a wiretap in a sense if you think about it, but he just was allowed to pick up the phone. That's what the court said. I mean, there's not too much more to say about that, but it's interesting to think about, at least I think. A man's arrested, his phone rings, and they can answer it. It's long, but they do say you have to have, it has to be related to the situation, was what the case implies, which I find interesting. So the beatdown. So Skydog comes home, and as soon as he returns to his home, a neighbor is being beaten by a masked man. He runs through his house. Skydog arrives, the police arrive, and Skydog consents to a search of the house. So he said, go ahead, yeah, sure, go ahead, look around my house. I really like my neighbor. You know, I'm worried about him being beaten again. So the police notice a stolen credit card folder on Skydog's laptop. They search the rest of his computer. Now, there's no warrant here. Now, we talked about this briefly a little bit ago.
But it's exigent circumstances.
What is?
That if it's on the screen and they see it as they pass by.
Well, that's plain view. No, yeah. Now, the stolen credit card folder, this is good. I like this. Dialogue, come on. But, yeah, you're right. The stolen credit card folder on the desktop would be plain view. But what about the rest of the search? Aha. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Exceeding the scope of consent. Exactly. Exactly. No. His scope was looking for evidence of this assault or this person or something along those lines. He didn't say, go ahead and look for my stolen credit card files. I don't know anyone who'd say that. But, so this case, U.S. v. Turner, 1999, even though consent to a search was given. Now, the facts in this case are ridiculous. So seriously, grab me outside. It's really crazy. But the consent to a search was given. The consent did not exceed beyond the evidence of the assault. The initial evidence, however, would be available. Make sense? So if you give consent, it's limited to the areas you've given it to. Like, yeah, sure, go ahead, look through my car. Doesn't mean go ahead and grab my pants. It's not the same thing. And that's exactly what would happen in this case. So military invasion, this is an interesting one. You guys, anybody read the administrative opinion I'm about to talk about? Okay, we will. So it turns out that the stolen credit card folder was actually just his Al and Tigger porno. Al, please stand up. Do a little dance. Everybody meet Al. Al's hilarious. All 25 terabytes of it. So Skydog's released again because they're just too embarrassed to talk about it. Unfortunately, those emails and letters Skydog sent to Bush. Bush, are you here yet? All right, Bush in the back. Sent to Bush look like terrorist documents. So the president orders a raid, the president, mind you, by the military, both Skydog and Bush's houses. So we've got one house. Bush, mind you, lives in Iraq, thank you. And Skydog obviously lives in Nashville. So we've got one foreign and one domestic. And there's cases exactly, forgot about that. If you haven't been to Freaknik, this is exactly what happens. You should go to Freaknik. Outer Zone's coming up, by the way. Just anybody who doesn't. Yeah, it is. It is pretty crazy. But so the Bush memo in 2003. You guys have probably heard about this, but there wasn't a lot of talk, unfortunately. And this hasn't been enforced in a court case, obviously, I should say. But this is interesting. He said, our office has recently concluded that the Fourth Amendment has no application to domestic military operations. Wow, that's a bold statement, in my opinion. Well, they have sovereign immunity, but they can't go violating your rights. I mean, think about the Fourth Amendment. What was it built for?
How do they do this with posse comitatus? Yeah.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
How do they do this with posse comitatus? The United States Army cannot go in your house.
No, I agree. This dumbfounds me. It was an amazing statement. I believe this was still when Gonzalez was. I think this was in Gonzalez. Don't hold me to it, but I do believe. I actually got to ask Janet Reno one time what she thought about some of the statements Gonzalez had made, and she said, I don't talk about other attorney generals. And she goes, but I asked her a question, and she goes, but I would disagree respectfully with the attorney general on that. Really nice woman, if you ever get to meet her. She's actually amazingly nice.
Great kisser, too.
Oh, Skydog. He would know. He'll swallow anything. Ooh. In-re terrorist bombings. Yes. So this is a brand new case. This just came out. The in-re terrorist bombings. This was dealing with the bombings in Eastern Africa somewhere. 2009 case dealt with obviously terrorism. But the Fourth Amendment's requirement of reasonableness, but not the warrant clause, applies to extraterritorial searches and seizures. Has to be reasonable. They can't come in and go shoot your dog or anything, or something like that. But they don't need a warrant if it's foreign. And these were actually American. These are naturalized citizens, but they were in, I think, I'm not sure if it was Tanzania or where it was. I can't remember. But they just went in and searched, and they could use the evidence. They didn't have to have a warrant. They could have gotten one, but they didn't need one because it was outside the U.S., even though it was an American or a citizen. Interesting. No, this was their house in the country. It was a foreign nation. I assume the government got permission from the sovereign to go in there, but still, they didn't need a warrant. And these were prosecuted in the U.S. Interesting.
I'm not going to make a statement concerning the validity of this, but I'd like to suggest that on the Bush memo, the very careful wording of domestic military operations relative to posse comitatus is a distinction. Posse comitatus specifically addresses using military force for law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. This would be a military action. Yeah, no, it seems they try to fit in something, it seems that, to me, just personally, that they were trying to fit in under basically a state of emergency. Like, we have to do this. We can go in. We're suspending everything. And it was interesting that they could do this. It's never been challenged, obviously. I don't think they ever tried to do this, and I don't think the modern administration, I'm hoping, won't try to do this. And Bush obviously didn't when they were in. But an interesting statement, nonetheless. Something to ponder. These were the statements that our government is making. So these are the cases. Someone mentioned, I think it was you, mentioned this earlier. Herring versus the U.S. This is a brand new case, 2009, January. Exclusionary rule does not apply, quote, this is great, when police mistakes are the result of negligence such as that described here. Now, this case is interesting. Hold on, let me make sure I have enough time. Ooh, I think I'm a little, no, oh, good, oh, good. The case, what happened? A guy went to a courthouse to get something out of an impounded truck. Not a courthouse, a police station, excuse me. He went in to get his truck. The clerk, one of the officers there, had seen the guy around before, knew he'd been in trouble with the law before, decided to make sure that he didn't have any outstanding warrants. Okay, fine, that happens. Runs a check, decides that nothing shows up in their county. So he calls the other county and says, hey, Mrs. Clerk, could you please check to see if, John has any outstanding warrants there? She comes back and reports that there's an outstanding warrant for his arrest in that county. So he's driving away in his truck. The officer pulls him over and arrests him for, outstanding warrant. Brings him in. 5 minutes later, the clerk calls back and says, oh, I'm sorry, that had been removed already. But he's been pulled over, searched his car. It was a search incident to a lawful arrest. Search incident, not a lawful arrest, but search incident to arrest. They search his car. They find an illegal handgun because he was a convicted felon, couldn't have a gun, and they find marijuana. And they say that the mistake was innocent here. It's basically like a good faith doctrine applied here, that the mistake was innocent and that the search was valid at that point. Now, there's a lot of debate on either side of this. Should the evidence be excluded because of the mistake, or does it open the door, on the other hand, for abuse? And that's usually where this exclusionary rule comes in. They're really tough on the police when it comes to this stuff. Scott can attest to this. You have to have very, very meticulous records on everything you do. And the reason for that is that they don't want abuse. Oh! Thank you, Scott. Yes, it was. But they don't want abuse of the system in that case. So what happens here is there's a lot of actually discussion on whether the modern court likes the exclusionary rule or not, and it seems they're trying to get away with it. That's where a lot of the debate's coming about, and a lot of the records you'll see on it are. But interesting, they made a mistake. It was an illegal search, and it was an illegal arrest, but evidence still stood, and the guy was convicted. And it was held by the Supreme Court. So Arizona v. Johnson, nothing we talked about really, but it deals with car searches again. The reasonableness of the search of the car applies to the passengers of the car as well. So if you're pulled over, a passenger can be searched just like the driver, which was the old rule. Now the passenger can be searched based on the reasonableness of the original stops. So everybody in the car can be searched at this point is basically what that's saying. And then State v. Stevenson. This is a Minnesota appellate court. But it was an interesting that a defendant excluded from his home by the court order had no reasonable expectation of privacy. So he gets removed from his house through a court order, probably domestic dispute, something along those lines. Is told not to go home, and now he's got no expectation of privacy, which is interesting from the sense that there's a lot of case law about when parties can give consent or not. If there's two parties in the house, one says yes, one says no, and who can say nothing. But at this point, if you're excluded from your house, you have no expectation of privacy, at least in Minnesota. But that's interesting. I'm sure that'll get appealed. But questions? Oh, one more. I am an attorney. I'm not your attorney. Are we all clear? The end. Questions? We have a couple of minutes here. Thank you. Thank you. No questions?
I know you're trying to avoid talking about the Fifth Amendment, but in the case where the one where the guy's laptop is encrypted.
Sure, for sure.
And in the second one where they said the encryption key is not testimony, so therefore he can be compelled to
Excellent.
give that up.
Oh, thank you so much.
There's
Thank you.
the court can compel him to give up that key. If he refuses to give up the key, then they can hold him.
Content, yeah.